is just give me your name the way you want to use it. Just tell me what it was. This is just for editing.
Oh, my name was Manny. They call me Bucky, my nickname for the service.
Did you want to be called that? Or?
It didn't bother me at all. I mean,
no, I mean
everybody had nicknames.
Yeah.
One guy had a snake, and you know, and
I was Limey.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And I was a Sergeant T4.
And division and rank?
It was 32nd Field, and 1st Infantry Division.
Okay. And what was your particular assignment? What were you supposed to do?
Well, over there, D-Day, I was on the wire section.
Just expand on
communication.
Because nobody's going to hear my voice if you answer in a full
yeah.
sentence.
No, it's in communications with the wire section. Laying telephone lines, you know, and installing telephones in the Fire Direction Center.
Okay. To the 18th Infantry.
Yeah, I did a little bit of that.
To the OP, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Bucky, how do you want to?
I'm Bucky Fowler, and let's see, I was a
Sergeant Major.
no, Sergeant T4.
T4?
Sergeant Specialist, 4th class, as a battery clerk. I went in, I was in the headquarters battery, 32nd Field, 1st Infantry Division, at the time of D-Day.
Same group. Okay, now, Manny, would you tell me about your arrival in England and any recollections you have about that period? You know, where you came from, what your duties were, just
you mean
ramble.
Before the first landing in England or the second? We went twice.
The second landing, when you come back from Sicily.
Well, we come back from Sicily. We ended up in Scotland, didn't we, Buck? And then we came down by train to Whitmore.
Well, that's when we come from America.
Oh, was it?
Sicily, we come back from Liverpool, we went to Dorchester.
Oh, Dorchester.
Broad, Maine, remember?
Broad, Maine, yeah, England, that's right. Gee, I forgot about that.
That was the time we come back.
And we were in Broad, Maine.
Dorset County, Dorchester.
Yeah, he knows more about it than I do about
Well, I'll ask
the
him too.
names and the places.
Yeah. And tell me about your recollections of that.
Well, while we were at Broad, Maine, we had to get ready for make the invasion of Normandy, which we didn't know we were going to Normandy at that time. And we were quarantined, and we had the British soldiers guarding us, so we wouldn't leave the area, because they were afraid if we left the area that we would go out and we could spill the beans, you know, to somebody else, the enemy. So, and then we went to church in the morning. They had to march us to church, remember this? Then they had to march us back. If we were going to go to a movie, they'd march us to the movie and march us back. And they had barbed wire in a certain area we couldn't leave, because that day we were waterproofing all our vehicles.
That was in Southampton.
No, that was in Tidworth. I mean, in Broad, Maine. That's where I was. That's where.
That's right. You stayed there, didn't
yeah,
you?
we stayed there. That's where
yeah,
we
went.
were.
We went to okay.
That we were preparing to go on an invasion, which we didn't know where we were going.
It was restricted.
Yeah.
And while we were there, the engineers were widening the roads in Weymouth and Dorchester, because the roads weren't wide enough to take all our tanks and heavy equipment to the loading docks to make the invasion. And that's about...
What's the time period of this? When is this? May? April?
Well, see, it was in June. We left in June, so it must have been the beginning of May that we were quarantined just to get ready, because I remember it was, you know...
Almost a month before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So...
what about liberty or leave in town? How were you treated?
Well, before the quarantine, we could go to Weymouth. We could go any place in England. We could go to London and them places. But we weren't getting ready for the invasion.
Right.
See, but now we started getting ready for the invasion, then we were quarantined.
Yeah.
See, and that's when they put the guard around us.
So did you have a good time?
Oh, very good time, oh yeah.
Went to the pubs, the people treat you okay?
Oh yeah, wonderful, yeah, people were good in England, yeah.
Yeah. Did you make any friends?
I didn't, no. There's a lot of guys did, I mean, the single fellas, you know, they were going out with girls and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
We'd go to town, we'd go to a movie, go to a pub and things like that. Yeah, play darts.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, people were very nice to us. Yeah.
Now, how about you, Bucky? What kind of duties did you have when you were in England? You were in the same place, right?
Yeah. Except I was a battery clerk at that time. in administrative, and we had moved from Broad, Main to Bournemouth because we weren't restricted the way they were. Because we weren't going in on D-Day. So we moved into Bournemouth, which is the Atlantic City of England at the time. And we moved into a house and we couldn't go down, we just killing time until they went. When they moved out of Southampton to go to the invasions, we moved back down into there, which we didn't go until, as I say, 4 or 5 days later, with the service batteries and rear echelon, so to say. But while in Bournemouth, we couldn't go to the beaches because they were all landmined and barbed wire on and so forth. But we used to watch some of the games and what they used to play over there.
Really?
Cricket.
And so
Oh,
forth.
yeah.
Right in Broad, because that was a big town, that Bournemouth. I mean, it was a big
Never been there.
summer resort. But see, that's why they weren't there. When they went into that restricted area, I mean restricted time, that's when they moved us out, because we were there with them all the time, from the time we hit from Sicily, and then they moved us out of there into Bournemouth.
Now, what kind of activity did you have just prior to D-Day? I mean, like Manny was talking about waterproofing the vehicles. Did you have anything to do?
No, we didn't have anything to do with that. We just had to. Well, I was going to say something, but I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't.
You had to take papers and stuff ready?
We had to. It was almost similar to what we went prior to going overseas when we was in Indiantown Gap. We were up day and night making new dog tags, making insurance policies out, checking the guys' allotments and so forth, and to make sure everything was in order before they went over.
So you had an idea you were going?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, we all did.
We all did.
Or when.
when we was in Indiantown Gap, we knew when we were going, what ship we were going on, and when we were going in personnel.
Yeah.
But we were restricted. We couldn't even go to the PX.
You were privy to more information than Manny
Oh,
was
yeah,
being
definitely.
the clerk.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, because we couldn't even, in Indiantown Gap, we couldn't even go to the PX. And we couldn't go to town because we knew had all this information. And the officers used to ask us, hey, Buck, when are we going to go? I want to tell when my wife to come and when to go. Hey, we just can't do that, you know?
Couldn't do that, no.
Because we'd been out of neck if we had, you know?
The sensors were at you
Right,
then,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, just prior to D-Day, there were some guys that sent
Same
mail,
idea, same idea.
and they couldn't send the letters.
Yeah.
No.
But then there was, of course, like it was the delay anyway. There was a delay anyway on the D-Day, the original D-Day, because on account of the weather.
Now, you never heard the term overlord.
Yes. No, not until after.
No,
Not till
no.
I
after.
take it
no.
back, not until
So,
after.
No.
so you knew nothing.
No.
You know, there was a guy that used to do crossword puzzles, and they discovered in his crossword puzzles prior to D-Day, he had used the word overlord, Omaha, Utah.
Okay.
He had and M15
Remember that?
dragged
yeah.
him in.
Yeah.
I said, what is this? It turned out to be just coincidence, but just amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
But we all knew, I mean, we knew darn well where we were going. You know, didn't know exactly where, but we knew we were going to Europe.
Yeah.
We knew, you know, we weren't going to Norway or anywhere like that.
Yeah. Now, why don't you tell me, Manny, about your preparation for the invasion? You didn't know when or where you were going, but you
No,
were
we
doing
didn't know.
something in the company area that.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, they're just waterproofing all our equipment, you know, and getting instructions on how to use a gas mask, you know, if you've got no water or you're gonna float. Because the gas mask was was a floater. You could use it as a, what'd you call it, a lifesaver, you know, preserver. And that's about all. I mean, we didn't do anything else, like our rifles weren't, what do you call it, Cosmoline or
Cosmoline.
anything like that, you know.
Yeah.
We didn't know anything until that morning and that night, we had to get ready to go the next morning and get on the ship.
Now, you didn't know till the 5th of June?
I think, I'd say around the 5th, yeah.
Didn't they start out on the 5th and turn around and bring them back, some of them?
No, not that I know of.
No?
Not that I know of.
There were some. There were some.
No, we just get right on the boat and then out in the water we went.
Yeah.
You
Now,
know?
do you recall the ship you were on?
LST.
You were on an LST?
LST when I went in, yeah.
And you
And
don't
that's
know,
when they dropped the door down.
don't know the number or anything?
No, gee, I don't know the number. I know it's 106. That kind of rings a bell.
Oh, there were hundreds of them.
Yeah, I know it, yeah.
My friend was on the 530,
Cause the
but he
ocean,
brought Canadian troops to Juno Beach.
cause I mean, the water was loaded with ships. All you gotta do is fire one round, you gotta hit one of them.
5,000 ships,
It was
5,000?
5,000.
going
Did
in
you
and-
know, the St. Lo breakthrough, which was just a little bit after Normandy, that there were 3,300 plane raids in St. Lo? Imagine the bombs that, we had because I know the sergeant says, we're gonna go through, I forgot who it was, the sergeant, had the map on the ground, and he says, we're going down this road, and we're not gonna come back. Says, we gotta keep right on going, that's when we started the driving over Patton and them.
Mhm.
And so I said, and it says, any questions? I says, yeah, well, what's on both sides of the road? He said, well, they just crouch, both sides of the road. I said, oh, I said, I guess we ain't coming back. So anyway, we went through without any problem, and broke through St. Lo, and then they started the drive.
That's what Teddy Roosevelt.
You can see they built up on the beach, but was 26 days on defensive position we were, after they made the landing, so that they could build up the troops on the beach and supplies and all these wafts that they were bringing in, I don't know what they call them now.
The mulberries?
Like the platforms that go up into the water, the docks,
Yeah.
so they can unload troops and men
Yeah.
to build up the army, you know? So, that's what we were defending for those 26 or 28 days behind the hedgerows until they were doing this, while they were doing this,
Yeah.
so that they could make that St. Lo breakthrough. Well, then when they made the St. Lo breakthrough, off we went.
Now, I was gonna ask you a question about, give me an idea what happened on that day from Reveille on, but you were into it before Reveille. I mean, you got into it the night before.
No, it was early in the morning. I got in it early in the morning.
Oh,
And
On
then-
D-Day?
Yeah, D-Day morning.
you got up at the normal time?
Oh, I don't remember. No, it couldn't have been normal time.
No.
No, it must have been early. It was before light. I mean, just that light.
Okay, so if you just
Just a daybreak.
go through that day with me, what, you know,
Okay.
what you did proceeding.
Well, we went in that morning early. I don't know what time it was. And I went off the LST with my vehicle.
No, I'm talking about getting ready to get on the LST.
Oh, on
From
the
the time you get
oh,
up, from the
yeah,
time
oh,
you
I
get
don't
up.
know. I don't know.
Do you remember anything about?
I think it was the day before that we got on the ship in
Yeah, because
Weymouth?
it was,
Weymouth Harbor.
Weymouth Harbor,
It's
yeah,
delayed.
I think it was the day before we got on there, because the next morning no, it wasn't the next morning, that night we sailed, but we didn't make the landing until early in the morning.
that was that delay.
So you're out at sea all that night.
Yeah, because I know the next day, boy, the water was really something. It was rough as hell, and they didn't predict it, they were supposed to be a good day. They had the experts, the world experts predicting the weather for that day, but they really fouled up on that morning.
But that English Channel can get pretty nasty,
Boy, it does too.
because I think 6-foot waves would be
Well,
nothing.
a lot of the men were seasick,
Oh, yeah.
that's all, but I didn't get seasick, I was lucky, I didn't get seasick.
Well, see, now that was one of the problems.
Yeah.
A lot of them were seasick, and they were in no condition to fight when they got there.
No, they weren't.
But so you boarded the ship at night, and you just sailed all
Yeah,
night?
Yeah, it was about
'Cause-
17 miles, I think it was.
Yeah, not very far, so you weren't moving very fast.
No,
No.
we had to all maneuver in position, you know.
Yeah.
So which,
What about you, Bucky? What, do you remember
Well,
boarding the ship? and all?
we got on board the same way, but we were on a more of a transport than an LST, because I remember after we got over there, I don't know, it was 4 or 5 days after the D-Day, and we had docked over there and was unloading, and to keep my mind occupied, I guess I volunteered to hook up trailers and move vehicles around that came up out of the hole with an elevator, so I know we weren't on an LST. because we was on LSTs in
Yeah,
Sicily.
we were going right
But it was a transport, and we got strafed and bombed once while I was unloading. We went, of course, the forces were inland quite a ways enough, so we didn't worry about anything like that. But that night was rolled up under 2.5 ton, I think it was, because to get away from the flak, because when the ME 109 and the 109s come in, the Yak looked like the biggest fireworks display you ever saw. And you had to get under a tree or under a vehicle, otherwise you get wounded by your own falling flak, which I missed by about 6 inches on. I got a piece of a 40 millimeter at home today on that I got it. That's just after we landed down there. We dug a foxhole and threw the dirt up, and it was Johnson.
Oh, yeah, Harold.
He said, "Well, come out and see all this fireworks." So I poked my head outside. We had we had a pup tent
Yeah.
dug over a hole because we didn't move that often like these guys did. So I poked my head out, and about that time, plunk. I heard this plunk, and that's what that was, a piece of the 40 millimeter. And we was under a big tree. We had like was slanted this way. We had our pup tent underneath that thing. And we were glad to get away from the beach because we were less than a mile inland then. And
Well, all that stuff that goes up has gotta come back
it's gotta
down
come
again.
down.
Back down, yeah, you got.
It sounds like, I don't know what, hail coming down through the trees sometimes. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And that's why you have to, you're walking guard the same way. You have to make sure when they started, you get underneath a tree.
What day did you go in? 4?
I think it was 10th,
10th? Oh, good. So they were
9th or
in.
10th or something like that. I
We
can't-
couldn't have been in too far because the way we went,
No, they didn't.
because we
Oh,
were,
that's right, Omaha didn't move as fast as the
No.
others.
no, because we had a whole,
You had those bluffs,
yeah.
the bluffs you had to take,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah.
All that stuff.
Them things were steep too, because I remember walking around one of them big pillboxes.
Yeah,
And the big pillboxes in the movies too, the same one.
yeah.
I mean, like I asked the guy where my outfit was, an MP. And he says, you go up there around that pillbox, he says, and you go up that path, you find a path up there. And he says, you'll find your outfit up there. So that was the third day when I went up around that pillbox. Because the first, second, and third day, I volunteered to stay at the beach because I didn't know where the hell my outfit was. So I had that big cliff, well, I was sitting on the bottom of that, soaking wet trying to get my bearings. And then the third day I went up and I found my outfit. Well, I was so damn tired and no sleep or anything. And I found my outfit by a hedgerow. And I lay down at the hedgerow. They took the names, the guys that were coming in, because we didn't all go in the same time. I mean, because some guys get lost and, different things happen before you got there. And so I lay down, and there was a 5-gallon gas can right beside me. I didn't give, didn't bother me. And I just lay down and went to sleep. And the sniper took a shot at me, but the gas can. And so they just, I don't know how many guys went out and got him, and they found him in a church steeple, the sniper. So they took care of
I
him.
like that job.
So I woke up, I don't know how long before I woke up, but I was pooped
Oh, yeah, yeah.
3 days, so.
Yeah, I remember thinking that if I ever got out of this situation, I'm gonna sleep the clock around 3 times.
Well, I tell you, off the camera, I can tell you about sleeping. One time I was up in Remagen, crossing the Rhine.
The bridge.
Yeah.
Well, I hadn't slept there for quite a while, I don't know how long I've been without sleeping. So we've got in the cellar, in the cellar of this house in Remagen. And we had to cross under a smoke screen that morning, because the bridge was blown out, and the cults were still there on the other side. And so we crossed, and I went in the cellar, and they had a coal bin, big like we used to have at home. And there was, boards across the coal bin. And I took some planks and I put it on top of the coal bin. I lay down and went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, there wasn't hardly a house standing, and I never heard a sound. I was gone.
It's really
I'm telling
amazing.
you.
A sound sleeper.
I always was, even though my wife said the bomb could drop and I wouldn't hear it. But I never heard a thing. I went outside, I said, what the hell happened?
Some funny things happen, huh?
Now, you knew by then that you were up against the 352nd.
I didn't know the outfits.
You didn't know
No,
that,
I never knew.
but
I might have heard them, but
you didn't,
Didn't,
cut the ice with me at all.
yeah.
yeah. You guys were a blooded outfit.
Yeah.
they call it. I mean, you've been Africa, Sicily.
And we had
So you
experience,
guys, you
yeah.
guys were the pros, really, compared to
Supposedly,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
supposedly some of the others.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
So-
some of them poor bastards, they really,
Yeah.
I see a truck one time come up with it, oh, fresh guys from the States. And I was in a foxhole someplace, and while I was looking in the foxhole, this truck was going by, they were gonna replace some of the infantry. And a shell landed right on the hood of that truck and it blew off every one of them. The
Yeah.
guys never shot around.
Never had a chance to,
But the other case is, a lot of these guys that came over as replacements didn't know what to do.
No, they didn't.
no, no.
I mean, you throw them in the middle of a battle.
Yeah.
The vets knew how to hide and
Yeah.
tell, oh, did you hear that?
Yeah.
That's
Some guys
That's
had
mortar, that we gotta get down.
They
been in the
turned,
army 8 weeks.
yeah,
Remember, we got one replacement, he'd been in the army just 8 weeks, and he was over there with us,
I remember.
from Pennsylvania.
I think it was in Africa, it was in Africa, now I know. And they brought up replacements, and the veterans told the replacements to go back. They didn't want them there because they would give away their positions. Because, I mean, you're in a desert, you know. and,
Got a little wadi to hide in,
Yeah,
that's all.
yeah. So they wanted them to go back, but they had orders to go to the front. But the veterans didn't want them up there.
No,
Not that they weren't any good, it's just, they didn't have the experience.
yeah. They would be a liability,
That's right.
yeah.
Sound travel.
Because them crowds, they could see everything in the desert.
And they
they
sound
had-
travel.
They had experience in the desert, the Germans, a lot of experience.
Yeah. Now, where did you land when you hit Omaha? Fox Green,
Oh,
Dog Green?
don't ask.
Red,
Didn't know that.
Was it,
red.
was it red?
Red?
Mm-hmm. Oh, what was it?
Red. You sure?
I couldn't tell you.
I should have brought my book.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
No, I don't
You know,
know.
I just thought you might remember.
All I know, I
I
landed
know it was
on,
Omaha, but I thought it was red.
all I know is I landed on a beach and
I mean, there was,
I didn't give a damn what.
Okay, well, that
what
leads to
color.
the next question. What was your impression of the coast of France when you hit it? I mean, you couldn't stand around and enjoy the view, but
No, I know, well,
what did you think of what you went up against?
well, I didn't think we were coming back, for one thing, not the way things were going. I mean, we all had a shift for ourselves once we, got there. 'Cause I could see all this, railroad tracks, sticking up out of the beach,
Oh, the tetrahedrals.
Yeah, and, 'cause a lot of them were still up when I got there, and some of them were already, path through. But,
Did they still have the mines on them?
Oh, yeah, well, this is what I wanted to tell you about that beach. While I was sitting there on that beach, there was 2 bulldozers clearing the beach. And there was these 2 young fellows, driving them, and they were going back and forth, knocking this barbed wire out of the way and everything. Well, one of them got a direct hit, and it blew him all to pieces. But the other guy, you might think he was on a farm. He kept going without paying any attention to where the shelter landing. But, I don't know if both of them got the Congressional Medal of Honor, but the guy that got blown up got the Congressional Medal of Honor. But they were just riding on the beach like they were home.
Now, was he hit with artillery or did he hit a mine?
Must have been, no, it was a shell. Yeah, they hit him.
With the big guns that were up on the...
Yeah, because the
Because
big
they had
guns,
that beach
oh, they had that, everybody had their own
crossbar.
spot.
the big guns, and I was sitting there on the beach, a guy told me, he says, do you see those shells coming in? I says, what shells, Well, the shells were so big coming from the Germans that while we were sitting at the beach, you could see them coming down. And I didn't believe
Going
that.
back, yeah,
Yeah, they were coming down like railroad guns.
yeah. I saw the railroad gun shelled up.
Okay, somebody said 40 miles they can
Yeah,
shoot.
yeah,
I don't know, I just,
Yeah.
that
and
railroad
I could
gun.
see the shells landing. And one of them hit that bulldozer and blew that thing apart. And I was sitting there by that cliff.
That's before you
That was
worked
a
your
good-
way
That was
inland.
a pretty good spot too.
You couldn't sit out the war there, though.
Oh, no, I wouldn't allow it.
Yeah. What were your impressions, Bucky, of the coastline in France?
Felt like turning around and going back to England. But really, I mean, we went in the daytime, as I said, we saw one LST, the rear end get blown up on it, just before we hit the beach, hit a mine evidently that had been sowed during the night, and when we was unloading, we was all very, like you say, very wary of being strafed and bombed, but it was just, we just looked at the beach and we couldn't believe that our guys had gone in there under the odds that we had heard and made it with the, you know, the cliffs and everything else, and then we could see the road where they went up and by it, which the road that we took, and to go by it, and it was just, at that time, of course, there was litter all over the place. I mean, ships, LSTs blown up, and tanks, and there weren't any bodies and all that, but the equipment that had been blown up and lost, you say, how in heck could they keep going?
Yeah.
You know, with all this debris on the beach.
Were the mulberries in when you got there?
The what?
The mulberries, the big cement
No.
units that they
Well,
brought.
we didn't go, I can't remember, but I know we didn't have an LST. So we didn't drop, you know, the front. So we went on a more of a freighter, some kind of.
But you said you docked. I'm wondering what you...
That's what I mean.
What you
They did
docked
have
to.
those docks out there. If you remember correctly, they had them out there at first, and then they lost them on account of that big storm.
Yeah,
And this big storm that came up, and they must have had them back up by the time I got there, because I know that we didn't walk in any water or go to shore that way. That all our equipment was hoisted off of the, you know, and gone, and it must have been a dock.
That was pretty well planned thing.
Yeah, well, they have been building them for months and
Oh,
months.
yeah.
But
They towed 'em over.
They said when they towed them over, it was like towing a 5-story building,
Yeah.
you know, and
then they had
were
that bed.
flotation, and then they just put them in place, because you could drive right between them,
Mm.
you know, the
Yeah.
two sides
Yeah.
of it.
Another thing I remember on the beach was, when I lost the vehicle and the Navy got me in, right, and I was on this little boat, and they were going to, this was the third time we tried to go in, I did.
Mm.
The Navy got me in, they pulled me in the water, and they got me on the boat, and I remember the boat got hit, I was in the kitchen there, and there was about that much water, and they gave me a cup of coffee and a blanket, and then the guy that was in charge, I don't know what they call him, but he supposed to bring it in again, but he started to go in, and they were shelled so bad that he pulled it back. But then he got orders from some bigger ship, I guess. Now you got to beach it, because our boat got hit. So that was the third time. So when he beached it, then I ran in, and they were shelling the beach, and then I lay down, and there was these guys all laying down, but they were dead. Come to find out, the medics had taken them and placed them there so that they could be shipped back to England or shipped back home, whoever was wounded, you know, wherever they took them, I don't know. I know they took them to England, but I mean, I don't know, some went right home or some went right to England. And then they stopped shelling, and I get up, and that's when I ran to the cliff, because the only protection I could find.
Yeah, because you had the overhang.
Yeah, and then I stayed there. Well, then, somebody said they wanted volunteers to bring in these trucks. So I said, well, I'll volunteer, because I don't have an outfit, you know. So, they would take a tow chain, and we'd go out in the water, and we'd dive down and tie it onto a bumper of a truck, and then the maintenance vehicle had the winch on it, would pull them out. We pulled out 23 vehicles out of the water, and plus some of the guys that were floating already, because it only takes 3 days to float. And we brought, you know, some of those in. And the third day, that's when I found out where my outfit was, and the guy told me to go on that. Because I was thinking about this, you know, after we left New Hampshire from,
Yeah.
and then
Talking about the last
and I got to thinking, the things I told him up there were some of the things I could think of, and then when you called, and I got to thinking quite a bit how I could get this lined up, what really happened, you know.
Yeah.
Everything I told him was the same thing I'm telling you, but this was more in line.
More constructive,
Yeah.
more
Yeah, come on.
organized.
Coming back.
Did you consider yourself in pretty good physical condition?
Oh yeah, always.
We all-
I was always in good condition. I could get up and walk 25 miles full pack without training for a week.
Now, you were 22
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so, 22.
when
yeah.
you went in, right?
No, I mean in the service.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 22, yeah.
So you were older than that now. You're
I'm 20,
24 or 5 now.
let's see now, I got married in 42. Yeah, I was 24 in 42. So we made the invasion in 44, right?
Yeah, it was 26.
So I was, what, 26?
Mhm.
Because I come out when I was
Same age
28.
as mine.
I come out when I was 28. I was an old timer, I guess.
Yeah, now you had a better idea of what you were up against
Yeah.
than these kids.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like I was 17, what did I know?
And we'd made two, he'd made two of them before.
Funny part about it, these kids, 17, were brave because they didn't realize what
They
was
didn't
going
know what
on.
the hell it was up
When
against.
when you're 17, you're not gonna get hurt.
They have no fear.
No fear,
No fear.
nothing's gonna happen to you, you're, you know, invincible.
Yeah, so.
But that's not always the case.
No, no,
And they probably found out.
yeah. They were good, some of the kids were good, because they were brave, you know?
It made the difference between winning and losing.
That's right, a lot of that did.
Well, you know, in battle, there's probably one guy fighting and 10 guys behind the scenes.
Sure, supporting them,
And,
right?
True.
and if the guys that are fighting are not fighting,
Mm.
forget
That's
it,
right.
it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how about yourself, Bucky? Were you in good condition?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kept, I guess,
Because of your training, or?
well, yeah, but we made sure, even though I was just a battery clerk, but we used to walk from, I was in England, we used to walk to Dorchester. That was 5 or 6 miles away. And then we was in Bournemouth, we used to hire bikes and ride up and all over the place. So I'd say,
Oh, it's pretty active.
at that age, we were always very, very active, and
Another thing we done in England
we never
before
even think
the,
about it.
before the invasion, or what we done there, but some of the training we had, I'll never forget this, was that they would take us out at night on a truck, a big 2.5-ton truck, and they'd pull the canvas down so you couldn't see out, you know, the back of the truck. And they would take us like 15, 20 miles, and you didn't know where you were going. And then they let you off, maybe half a dozen of us in different places, you know, and we'd have to find our way back to our camp. And you could not walk on roads. You could cross roads, you know, go through fields and stuff. So, but you couldn't walk on the road. You have to find your way back to camp. And then, you know, it's in case you got lost, you know, over in Europe. And then I forgot they gave some kind of a prize to the first group that came in.
You had a compass?
No, nothing. You don't have anything. No maps, nothing. You gotta find your way back. It's like a dog they let out on the farm someplace, you know? And they come back home. We all come back by breakfast time. We would go out at like 9, 10, it must have been after 9 because they'd never get dark in England till 10 o'clock.
Yeah, double British summer.
Well, they call that orienteering.
Yeah,
Yeah,
They
right.
do that
Right.
today,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
you know.
My son did it in
we
Hunter.
never-
It's a hobby.
We never got a prize,
Yeah,
but,
Brian used to do that with the 82nd.
and you weren't supposed to ask anybody where you were.
Yeah.
Oh. You never asked.
For a couple times. How you gonna win a prize? We never got a prize though.
You might not have liked the prize if you got it.
Yeah,
I forgot what it was.
probably a 3-day
Probably a
pass.
pass or something.
Oh, God.
But that's the kind of training we had before we left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me something about the progress going inland once you found your company. You know, the hedgerows, the ditches, you know, that was kind of messy.
Yeah, well,
Fighting through that.
Well, when I did get up on the top of that cliff there, or whatever, and I found my outfit, and then and the captain told me he was going to make an agent out of me because I didn't have any equipment. So I was driving a Jeep, you know, to deliver a message, and so I one day he gave me a message to deliver to this outfit, and he gave me the directions on the map and everything, no paper. You had to get it in your head. So I kept going to these different places where he told me to go till I come to four corners. Now I lost my directions. I don't know which way to go. So I was sitting there in the Jeep and I turned around and there's 3 Krauts in the back there. And so I turned around like that and looked at them and I went like this. I called them. I didn't even have a jackknife. And so the MP came by on a motorcycle. And I said, whoa, you know, I stopped him, and I said, what's the matter? I says, well, I'm supposed to deliver this message. I said, but in the meantime, I said, I got 3 Krauts in back of me, and I says, they're giving up. And I said, I don't even have a pistol. He said, you're a goddamn fool, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I guess so. He said, well, he said, I'll take him. He says, we get a prison camp back here. So then I asked him the directions how to get this outfit, and I went to that outfit and gave a message. And that was already up on top there before we... Then we advanced to St. Lo. That's the last, I mean, I don't know what went on between there. Well, there was hedgerows. So we were, you know, at a defensive position. But there wasn't much going on for about 26 days.
And you were pulled out for rest and the
No, we was just sitting in that position,
Yeah.
the defensive position. The doughboys were ahead, right?
Right.
And we had telephone lines going to them, and we had to lay telephone lines to them, and also for the fire direction center. Then that's when I had to put installation in the fire direction center. And a couple of times I had to go up and like bring radio to open the observation post or to the door. I remember going by doughboys and they were laying down on the, I was almost running over their feet when they were laying down in position. And then I come back and I come to Four Crossroads one time and there was an airburst, boy, and I stepped on that gas, boy, but I didn't get anything. It wasn't exactly over me. And
Now, did you run with your windshield down?
oh yeah, you couldn't. That windshield would
No, they weren't stringing wire across the
Not
road
then.
yet.
No, not that.
This came later.
That was later, yeah. That's when they put the angle iron and the front
Cut the
of
front
the Jeep.
Yeah, to cut the wires.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
That was
nasty
some
trick.
guys, you get the heads cut right off.
Yeah. Did you run into any of the Polish or Russian volunteers that were in the German army?
No.
I understand there were some that had their suitcases packed,
No.
and they went up to the American troops and said, comrade,
No.
and they were anxious to surrender.
Oh, sure, no.
Oh, they didn't want to fight for the
No,
Germans.
they were just confiscated,
Yeah.
confiscated.
You didn't see any of them?
No, I didn't see it.
Okay.
The one-
We had Italians in Africa
Oh,
sometime,
they
and
don't
Sicily, they quit.
want to fight at all. They could. I know
Yeah.
three guys captured 200 prisoners.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you'd be standing in chow line, and all of a sudden you got 3 or 4 Italians there.
Souza was one of them from Loring Street.
Yeah. Oh,
Right on through.
yeah. Well, they used to say, you want to buy an Italian rifle, never fired and only thrown down once?
Well, there were a lot of jokes about that.
Or the Italian tanks,
Yeah.
1 speed forward, 5 in reverse.
Yeah.
See some of I got some pictures at home. I think, was it, I forget who the hell took them, in Sicily. And I'm telling you, even then you couldn't believe the equipment, how old and hard rubber tires and all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What they were fighting, and then the Germans left them to, to hold the position while they took off.
I know another thing that happened at Normandy. After a few days, we were in this hedgerow, and there was a field, in between the hedgerows, and there was a rabbit running around loose, and we all got in a big circle, okay? And that rabbit was in the middle of that circle, and this kid, we were all trying to get that rabbit.
Rabbit stew.
Yeah, and this kid Whitson, he was a friend of mine. In fact, he was in my section.
In the Alabama, was it?
He
Yeah.
had his helmet off and he went whack, and he happened to hit that rabbit and knocked him out. Which is one of them lucky.
Look, yeah.
And that's where a friend of mine was killed, Donnelly. He was from Lowell, and he was on a Piper Carbines and L4s,
Yeah, observer.
L5s, and they were observation planes.
Lieutenant Harper was with him.
Yeah, and he got hit. And Donnelly was a good friend of mine, and he got killed. And they wouldn't tell us that he got killed. They'd say he burned to death.
Mm.
And
Wow.
but they wouldn't tell us because they figured we had enough, bad reports. So but he was well liked.
His baby was born when he was in Indian Town Gap, remember?
Yeah.
We all chipped in.
How much contact did you have with the French civilians?
We had 3 French civilians in my outfit. They were what they would do. They would, as we were advancing, they would put their civilian clothes on, and they would go across the line, and they would come back and tell us what was up there. You remember those three guys we
I
had?
remember the guy was a 15-year-old guy, was an orphan. Remember, and he traveled with us all through Europe. Is the cook's helper.
Yeah, that kind of rings a bell.
I forget his name now, but he was an orphan, and I know we heard the story back there. We verified that they found out he was an orphan. Otherwise, he couldn't travel with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he traveled with us, and he worked with Briannis in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And he was all the way through Europe.
They were good.
I forgot.
How did you get these people?
They just came in.
Must have been through the army that probably got them,
Free French or French resistance?
Yeah.
First resistance.
what they were, yeah.
That's what they were.
Yeah.
And then every time we'd march to go someplace on the truck, and they'd always sing the French national
Yeah.
anthem, and we'd all join in.
Yep,
Yeah.
And they were good, because I remember one time that we were, he was in the truck with us, and this kid, I just had his name the other day, my mind. We got on the edge of the road because we were being shot at, and he was in the hole, in the ditch. Maybe you can think of his name, Buck. And
Rains. That's when
Rains.
Rains get killed. yeah.
Rains, yeah, he was the one.
He was from Indiana.
Yeah, and he was in this ditch, and they said, the sergeant yelled, "Don't stick your head up."
Keep your head down.
And he stuck his head up. When he stuck his head up, your mouth sometimes automatically opens, and he got a bullet right down through his mouth. So this French civilian was in our truck, because there were three of them, it was a different truck, you know. And this civilian, he jumped out of the truck. He got so mad that he went up and got the sniper.
Yeah.
And the ranger was dead there. He was only maybe 30 feet away from me the most. Yeah.
How could a sniper be that accurate?
I don't know. Some of them were.
That's what they were. They were sharpshooters.
Sharpshooters.
They had to be.
Either that or was a lucky shot, you know.
But you know that guy, like you say, he jumped out of there like that. But if you look back at well, even the World War I, Sergeant York and all those, they got the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's what happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
They see their buddies get hit and they get teed off, and they do something
Yeah.
that you normally wouldn't do. You're just so GD mad, you know, and,
Yeah,
and
you do
it
think
takes
about-
the enemy by surprise. And by the time he's over it, he's got you. You've got him.
Yeah, you know what I'm thinking, you know.
Yeah.
Just,
You get so damn mad.
yeah,
I can understand that.
you know.
Well, you heard a lot of cases of that in the islands, out
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the Pacific where I was,
Yeah.
that
Same
they would
thing.
just rush them, you know.
So deep,
Because the
man.
Japanese had their banzai
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
attacks, where they would just keep coming.
Keep going,
And
yeah.
they're
It's like
stacking,
ants, yeah.
they're stacking up like cordwood in front of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So,
It didn't make a difference.
but that was their style.
Yeah.
But I remember the time in Normandy there when we were we were probably 3 or 4 miles behind these guys, and it was just before the St. Louis breakthrough, and Manny was in the foxhole, like I don't know, maybe 4 feet square, deep enough so he could sit in it, and he had a switchboard there, and he was operating the switchboard, and that's when the engineers come down and started hauling. There was some smoke off to there, hauling the back of the trucks. They were hanging on the trucks, hauling gas, and all this and that. So I was sitting on my helmet, and I said to Manny, I said, "What the hell am I supposed to do?" He said, "Where's your gas mask?" I said, "Down the road 1/4 of a mile in the Jeep."
I told him, I said, take it off.
Yeah. So Manny put his diaphragm on, so because he could talk through it.
No, I didn't have a diaphragm.
You didn't? I thought you
I didn't
did.
have the one you could
Oh.
speak through.
So I started going down there, and somebody come out and tried to jump in a 3/4 ton to get the hell out of there, because their gas mask was on a Jeep that was out on patrol, wire patrol, and he got so damn nervous he couldn't run it. Guests come out, he was so shook up, so I get in, I drove the damn thing out between the hedges, went down, I see the Berkey, I see the cows out in the field, and I said, there ain't no gas, because the smoke was going over there. Didn't bother them, but Berkey said, let's get the hell out of here, Buck.
They hit a chemical.
They hit a-
chemicals in the barn. That's
It was
what
the
they-
barn and dry hay.
No, I was in the hole there operating the switchboard, and I couldn't hardly talk. I had to yell through the gas mask
Yeah.
because I didn't have one that
Well, you
was.
didn't have a diaphragm. I thought you did. No?
Huh? Yeah, I had one.
Yeah.
And I was trying to talk to this outfit, and the colonel butted in on some line, and he says, "That you, Susan?" And I says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, you can take the gas mask off." He says, "Because that's not gas." He says, "Somebody here, the shell landed in a barn, had chemicals in it, and that smoke spread all over the field."
You know, musty hay and so
And
forth.
some of the guys dove for that gas mask because they
Hey,
didn't figure
that's
they
the
were
first
gonna
thing you
have gas.
do.
Well, they forgot to pull the plug out,
Hey,
and they couldn't breathe. They were passing out.
Yeah. But they remembered World
Panic.
War One.
yeah,
Yeah, wow.
desperation.
Yeah. But what about civilians that didn't join in with you? How about the different towns you'd go through? You must have met French civilians.
Well, mostly I can remember was in Belgium where they had their resistance. Because I became good friends with these people in Belgium, and he was the head of the underground group in that area, in Orsnet. And so I met his wife and the 2 children there, about 12, 14. In fact, we still correspond with them. And I mean, they're grandmothers now. And they were only 12, 14 years old at the time, and of course I went over there about 25 years after the war, and I wanted to see the mother especially because she was really nice to us. And she had got killed 6 months before I got there, car accident. Well, come to find out, I never met her husband until almost the time we were leaving. And he was standing on top of the bar in the bar room, giving his men, the resistance force, you know, giving them instructions. That's when I met him, first time I met him. And he just died a couple of years ago.
That was about halfway between Aachen
Yeah.
and
So this
and
town,
Liège. This little town of Moore's Neck.
this town that we stayed at, they gave me a room and everything, and after I came back from the Hurricane Forest for that 3-day pass, they gave me a nice room up there. And one time the officers wanted, the doctor wanted a room in that house, and they says, no, you can't have that room. They says, why? He says, why not? Because that room was saved for Souza. And he said, well, how do you know he's coming back? He says, well, we know he's coming back.
And you were only a sergeant?
Isn't that,
I had 13 guys sleeping in that attic. And I laid a telephone line from the girl, she
yeah,
had,
how was that finished?
the younger girl, she had something wrong with her hip, and the doctor told her to tie one of those things on her ankle, you know, and it draped it over the couch for the
Stretch
weight.
it.
And so some of the fellows in my outfit could talk French, you know, they were Frenchmen from this country. And I put a telephone to her bed, or her couch, down into the bar room where we had headquarters. And the guys would talk to her in French. So that way and then while we were there in that house, there were buzz bombs flying over all the time.
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I asked them if they had any more rooms for anybody. They gave me a nice room, private room for myself. I even had my brother come out and stay with me because where he was at, the buzz bombs were landing. I said, why don't you come up here? It's a lot safer than it is back there. So he come up, and then that's when we had 13. In fact, I got some pictures of us eating dinner in that book.
Yeah. Now, you spoke Portuguese,
No, I didn't. I understand Portuguese. I couldn't speak it.
don't speak it?
No.
Yeah. It's always good to have another language.
It is, yeah. I could, well, of course, there was no Portuguese speaking in, you know.
Oh, in
the
Europe
war,
anyway,
you know.
yeah.
Yeah. But Portugal was the place to
Oh, yeah.
to
The
leave
spies,
Europe.
Yeah.
That was the embarkation
Yeah.
to get back.
Yeah.
All the spies.
Yeah,
Yeah, oh yeah. I guess-
both sides,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I
both
guess-
sides, yeah.
both sides.
That's why my wife was translating for the FBI at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Now, 50 years later,
Had serial numbers, what, 8, 6 and 8 numbers. Most of them had 8 like we did. And they'd ask me, what's this guy's number? I stopped to think where he come from, when he come into service. Because every time you type a guy's name, you had to put a serial number down. Whether it was a payroll, allotment, or whatever. And I figured, I come almost 2/3 of the
yeah,
130 men that I knew their serial numbers just by heart. Because every time you put a man's name down, you know the guy, because you figure, okay, he's in Ohio, right? He was drafted in 41 and those 42, or this and that, in different areas. Like they come from the mid, like range
yeah.
and those guys,
The crowd.
theirs was 3305 something, you know? And the guy that was in, before we went in, was in 39 and 40 down at Louisiana Maneuvers. They had only 5 or 6 numbers. And usually it was 6-9 or something. I remember that. And you could always tell them, and then, of course, then you had U.S. Army, that was draftees. You had RAR, regular Army Reserve, and then regular Army. You had to put that after every guy's name too. So you
you
knew.
remember yours.
So I was regular Army.
I didn't even know half the guys' names in my own. I mean, I knew,
First names.
their first name was nicknames that we
Yeah,
knew.
right.
You know, like Snake Worm,
Yeah.
and, Omaha Boy, and that was his real name. He was Indian. It was three
Anthony
Indians,
Omaha,
you know,
yeah.
and things like that. My name was just Blackie. I mean,
For that.
but that was common. You know, I mean, nothing of it. Those things.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And
Well, see,
after a while, you begin to think you own
Never,
that name.
you always use your last name, never use first name.
Never use the first name in the army.
yeah, well, see, in radio school, because I was the only one from the Boston area, out in Southern California.
Well, you were a foreigner, huh?
Oh, I was really a
He was out of
foreigner.
place.
But that's why they called me Limey,
Yeah.
because of the
They
accent.
call you what?
Yeah.
Limey.
Limey? Oh,
Limey,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
an accent, yeah.
Oh, they were all from the South and
Oh, yeah.
California and Washington.
We call him Blackie, you know, but I remember one time somebody said something about Buck, and Manny says, yeah, you know, Bucky comes from a little town down the Cape. He says, I went through there with my Chevy, he said, pull out the choke and suck the whole town in and kept right on going.
Yeah, I used to pull that a lot.
So that's why we called each other Blackie, we had all kinds of, it was, I mean, you get living with a guy, we was in there 5 years together.
Well,
You figure, you know, you get to, you know them better than your own brother.
oh, yeah, you
It is,
develop
it's
some pretty
amazing.
good friendships.
You do, yeah. Well, I mean, hard times, you know, you always,
Yeah.
you
You're
get,
dependent upon each other.
yeah, you depend upon each other for different things, and you become real close, you know?
Yeah,
And you lose a guy, and you know, you feel real bad, it's like a brother, really,
oh, yeah,
you know?
yeah, it could have been pretty tough.
Yeah. And the guy-
Did you have anybody real close?
Well, the closest guy was Donnie,
Donnie,
him and I.
Yeah.
In fact, we used to fight a lot together, you know, the guy was twice my size. And he could pick me up like that. He was a welterweight boxing champion or someplace.
He's a good egg.
Yeah, what was his first name? Well, anyway, he come from Lowell, and he was a real Irishman.
Yep.
So he could really fight too, you know, he was, well, they had him and another Irishman named McCracken from Indiana. And the two of them were built like this, you know.
Like a football player,
And
yeah.
I'm 120 pounds, you know, soaking wet. And we're down the beach down in Camp Landing, Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm standing in between the two of them, and they take, I wish I had that picture, I could never find it. And they took a picture of me with these two guys, and these two guys are standing there with their chest out, you know, and everything, and I'm standing there like this, you know, bent over. You know, like night and day. They took a picture of the three of us.
I get a picture of you and Donnelly down there,
Have you? Yeah.
but it wasn't like, what the hell was his name?
McCracken,
Alan.
McCracken was a guy that if we got any prisoners and they wouldn't talk, that he would take them out back. And I seen one SS prisoner come in.
And coax them.
Oh, God, his face was all blown up, something awful.
Yeah.
Mac didn't know for
So
sure.
how did Donnelly team up with you, get together with you? He liked you?
Well, we slept near each other, you know, a lot, and we've gone to town together
Yeah.
and things like that. I don't know, we just took a liking because I was with Donnelly a lot of times.
He had a
Him-
son just before he went overseas.
Him and McCracken. We just, you know, we just happened to hitch up.
Yeah.
And he was a good egg, but he used to grab me and lift me up in the air and everything. Of course, he was a brute.
Yeah. Well, you'd go to a bar and he'd let you get into a fight and then he'd finish
Oh
it.
no, I never got in a fight. Donnelly never did. McCracken.
Yeah, he could get kind of teed off and he get drinking.
He was the nicest guy you ever met.
Yeah.
And
But
he
some
was-
guys, when they drink, they get very,
Dual personality.
oh, God, they want to fight.
Very
Yeah.
aggressive, yeah.
But, you know, I've seen a lot of that.
Smith, the Indian.
Who?
Not John Smith,
Yeah, John Smith, the Indian.
not the young kid.
Oh, that was Garfield Brown.
Oh, yeah, okay, well, John Smith was the guy. And he over in Europe, he'd come home, he'd come back to the office, and I think we all beat up. What the hell happened? He said, well, some of them black boys, he said they were American Indians.
Oh,
And he'd
yeah.
take off at them. And he'd come back, then two or three of them jump on him. The poor guy went, and he was what, 39? We often wondered how the hell he ever got in. But
Well,
he
he
was
was in,
39 years old.
I went out with John Smith one night to England, and on the way back, we stopped at this fish and chip joint. Of course, John Smith was a lot
He was a
taller than
good
me.
man,
I was
yeah.
a shrimp
Good
beside of
size
him,
man.
you know.
He was a Sioux Indian.
full-blooded Indian.
Yep.
And we went in this fish and chip joint, and of course, they closed at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And so we went in there, and the place was just jammed with, the room was a little bit bigger than this room, and there was a little counter there. And the place was jammed with GIs. Of course, John Smith stood a head taller than most everybody. And the girl was working there in charge, and it come 10 o'clock, she says, time please, that means everybody gotta leave, because that's the law.
Yeah.
Well, no, we were moving. So John Smith had a few in him, you know, and when an Indian gets a few in him, they go crazy. So she said again, time please, because I'm on the side of John Smith, the only thing happens, I want to be on his side. So he says, okay, you guys, he says, you heard the woman, now get. They all went out, they seen John Smith. So John Smith and I got that fish and chips and we went out.
Yeah. Did you like fish and chips?
Oh yeah, it was good over there.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
I
were
liked
good,
them.
yeah.
Put it in the newspaper?
I think so.
Yeah.
That kinda rings a
Yeah, oh,
bell.
they always wrapped it
Where
up.
the grease runs
Oh,
down
yeah.
your arm, you know.
They did the same thing in Sicily with the pecans. They'd roast them, and we had movies after, and this was after the war was over. They'd have,
But sure wasn't almonds?
I guess it was almonds, yeah.
Yeah.
It was almonds, and they piece of paper about that big, like a cone, and it was full of roasted
Almond.
almonds. Because we was in an almond grove, that's what it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
I couldn't think of the name.
Yeah.
And they'd come around and sell them when we was at the movies, when we was at the movies.
Yeah.
But that's where just before we went into Africa, in Sicily, Lou and I went up to the loading docks there, and they was loading a bunch on, and we was at the bar there, and this Red Cross girl woman come up and saw the First Division patch of Lou, Fowler and I. She said, "You guys going to Sicily?" She says, "Yeah, we're going in a day or two." And she said, "Well, my husband is in Alaska, and he knows Colonel Kilroy from Division Headquarters, right?" And he said, "I'd like to get a letter to Colonel Kilroy so he can get in contact with him and get him transferred to the First Division." So I said, "Yeah, we'll be going a few days." And I says, I can make an arrangement so, go in and see Colonel Kilroy." She said, "Will you?" So she went over to the bar, and my guy gave us coffee and donuts, and this little second lieutenant come in, and they weren't supposed to serve anybody unless they were going to ship out, because there was a ship right there being just through loading. And the guy behind the counter and the Red Cross nurse gave the second lieutenant the hell. He took his tail in his leg and he took off. But she gave me the letter, and then we went in, and we went into Palermo after you guys went in. And we get up to the First Division, and I went in to see Colonel Kilroy, and I gave him a big highball and told him I give him the letter and told him the story. He said, "Good, thank you so for it." I took off. Well, that was way before it was all over, it was still fighting. But when we got back to Palmadive on Ashero, again, laying around there for a month and a half before we went back to England, they had movies, and then Red Cross girls come there, with the wagons in there to get a couple of cigarettes and so forth. So there's this girl. Oh, she said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I said, "What'd I do? I forgot all about it, She said, "Well, that letter, the colonel's got the process going. My husband is going to come over here." Well, we went back with a bag of donuts that night, boy. She said, "Come around the back door." Because everybody else sees, they give them hell.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those little human touches.
Yeah. You were talking about Indians in your regiment,
We had 3 of them.
3 of them. Did you ever run into the Navajos that they used as talkers?
No, we just,
That was the Pacific, I guess.
Mm.
2 of them were from the Sioux tribe. I don't know where the other one was from.
Well, you know they use Navajos in
Oh,
the,
yeah, I know they did that in the
on
Pacific.
on the
Yeah.
telephones because
Mm.
nobody knew their language.
They couldn't break, they
couldn't
thought it was a
break it.
code, they couldn't
They
break it.
couldn't break it, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what do I get here? Now, it's now 50 years later. How do you feel? How do you feel about what your group did? Do you take pride in your?
Oh, yeah, sure, we always did.
Hey.
We had always figured that it was a great thing that we did do.
Number one.
Yeah, and 'cause especially the First Division with the record they have, Their record goes back, I don't know how many wars.
We were the first in Europe.
You always figured you couldn't find a better outfit than our outfit, Because it was a great outfit. They did a lot. We had quite a few days on the line. They're credited out. I think the First Division got 455 days from what I understand on the
That was
line.
almost, yeah. Actual combat.
That's over a year.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then we were overseas 36 months, and I got married, and I didn't see my wife for over 3 years.
Yeah. Now that's the interesting thing. You were in the middle of a war and you got married.
Yeah, I got a 3-day pass to Boston, the Hotel Manga, which they blew up. Remember that came down, the Hotel Manga? Well, I came with a 3-day pass, and I borrowed a car that belonged to a bootlegger. He lived down here in Manning Street, Hudson. And I took the car, it was a Pontiac, it was like a tank,
Oh, yeah.
And took the car to Boston on Route 9, because there was no traffic like there is now. I hit 60 miles an hour with it. Boy, I was flying. And I came back and told him I went 60 miles an hour, he almost died. The car had never been that fast.
How'd you feel about getting married in the middle of a war, though?
I don't know, it didn't seem to bother me any,
You knew you were coming back.
I always had a feeling I was coming home, always. Even in the foxhole with say my prayers, you know, and all that, and I figured I was coming back. There's a lot of times I don't know.
You had some of that foxhole religion?
Yeah.
I wrote to my mother,
I still go, every Sunday, to church. I made a promise that I would.
Yeah.
I still go.
How about you, Bucky?
I wrote my mother a letter on December 29th, 1942. Said, I don't throw anything away, I'll be home.
Yeah.
I was in Africa. They had a chance to get me and they missed. They landed a bomb on each side of me and neither one went off.
Oh, duds.
I got sprayed by the mud and all that went up, and the foxhole I was heading for was filled up with other guys.
Now you remember when you came back, when you came back to this country, and the welcome back you got.
Oh, geez, don't talk about that.
And just tell me about that and relate it to the way the Vietnam veterans.
I mean, after we hit Devons,
Well,
I don't know how
when
people.
we come back, we hit the Devons the day before VJ Day. So we were held up because the next day we were supposed to get discharged. All the civilians that work in the discharge center had to celebrate. So we got held over another day. And the next day I got discharged. We hitchhiked into Boston, signed up for a bonus, and hitchhiked home.
I did too.
And my sister picked me up in Middleborough because there was no transportation from Middleborough down. I took the train home, and my brother was down cellar. He come up and pretty knocked himself up, come up so fast he knocked his head on a beam. And that was it. We went out that next night, I think it was, with my brother-in-law to a pub, a bar room, and I mean, that's the only time I think in the world I ever slugged anybody. Because, I mean, they were still, you know, very patriotic, and I had no clothes. All I had was my uniform. I sent some clothes home when my brother had worn all out.
That's all we are.
And so they played the Star Spangled Banner, the last thing at night before they closed the bar. This was down in Plymouth. And everybody stood up. This one guy didn't stand up. Well, I waited until it was all over. And I surprised my brother-in-law, because I'm not a big guy.
Yeah.
I reached down, I grabbed him by the shirt, picked him up, and pow! By that time, my brother was a big guy. You know, he come up and stood between us. Nobody said a damn thing. But that's the only time I ever hit a guy. I probably had enough drinks or something, but that was it. I mean, then we had Carver Home Day a year later, the following summer. We always have a Carver Home Day, have a clam bake and all this and that. Everybody that used to live in Carver comes home, and they have a big clam bake. And we veterans were all invited, and we get lobster. That was it. That was what the town gave me for fighting, being in the war 5 years, and they made a wooden plaque down in the little square, and my name was on it as a veteran. And
no gold star behind
that was it. No, I went back.
I was pretty bitter when I came home.
Oh,
I was really bitter. The reason I was bitter was because it took almost 2 months to fly home, for one thing. And my brother came home in 14 days on a boat. And we had a fight all the way home, and I had 138 points
yeah.
to come home, and the highest one in the division was 154.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of points, and I wasn't married. I didn't get any points for having children or being married, because I didn't have any. Because they didn't give points for married men.
Oh.
But you had other things they could give points to.
Yeah.
And I said, gee, all these guys are going home. You know why? Because they were draftees. We were regular army. You know, we went to see the inspecting general, went to see the chaplain, on that flight home. So when I landed, it took all that time. It's a long story coming all the way home. But anyway, to make a short story, we got to Rhode Island, and we had to hire a bus to go to Fort Devens because the train wasn't going to leave until 5 o'clock at night, and we got there at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So we chartered a bus to come to Fort. When I got to Fort Devens, they weren't going to let me home. I only got 14 miles to come home. And so I sold part of my shoes to an MP officer to get me off the post, that's how he got me off. He told me what number bus to take and what to do. Then I got down to air, and I met these three. I called my folks up because my wife didn't have a car. And my father took my wife down to meet us. And of course, they couldn't come right away for some reason. I don't know, my father was working or something. And so I started walking through the city of Air, because I had already gone to the USO Club to call home. And so anyway, these three girls met me on the sidewalk, and they asked me if I could carry my bag. I had a little music. In fact, I still got it hanging up down cellar. And if they could carry my bag, and I says, yeah, go ahead. So we're walking down the street there, and one of the girls says, did you get the victory kiss yet? I says, no, and I don't want the goddamn thing either. So they give me my bag back, and I had some medals, from my blouse, my Eisenhower
They
jacket.
made you put them on,
So anyway, I got walking down the street to Hudson here, and I took the jacket and I folded it so nobody would see the medals. So I walked home, and anyway, no, that was the night I came home on pass. That wasn't the same first night, because the same first night I walked partway home, and my father, my mother, and my wife came down to pick me up. I was sitting on the stone wall, waiting for him. Boy, I wasn't telling you, I never was so bitter in my life. Nobody said hi to me down Main Street. Nothing. Never said a word to me. That was my celebration when I came home.
That doesn't sound much different than the Vietnam
No,
does.
it wasn't a particle difference. And yet these guys have been crying ever since.
Yeah, they've been crying, yeah. We spent 6 months
I
in
mean,
the desert in
it's a
Africa.
different type of war, but,
We spent 6 months in the desert of Africa, and these guys go in the Desert Storm and spend 3 days.
yeah,
And they're the biggest heroes you ever met.
that's right.
And the Marines were the biggest heroes, and they never even fight around.
Yeah. We were the original desert,
Yeah, we were the original.
Desert Storm. And we didn't have the right equipment.
I got trapped in Africa there for 3 days, 6 of us.
Yeah,
So-
it's strange the way things
It is.
happen.
It's a funny
Yeah.
world.
So I was pretty bitter when I came home. I never forget that. That thing you got back there, that in that folder, that's the whole history of the 33rd Field Artillery, which is in our division.
I was wondering when I got that. Has John got one of them?
No, I want to give it to him.
Oh, he don't say, because I come across one just the other day.
Yeah.
So, who was it, Malcolm gave us?
Our lieutenant in New Hampshire is making the
Yeah.
history of our battalion.
Yeah, I should talk to him. 'Cause
Nice guy, talking.
this might be, when I get the D-Day thing done, it might be a good idea to do a history of the First Division. Just,
Because he got hit. He got hit in Germany, wasn't it? Yeah. He was a forward observer.
Yeah,
He was out front all the
he
time,
was always up
out
front.
with the doughboys, and out in front of the doughboys all the time. And he finally got it in Germany, so I don't know just where.
well, he
He's
was
a
there to
hell of a nice guy.
call in shells.
And yeah.
Well, I used to go on reconnaissance a lot. There was a colonel and a lieutenant, and some lieutenants. And I thought he was one of them that I went with.
No doubt about it. 'Cause that was his job.
Yeah, and I don't know who it was that I went
Yeah,
with.
no
or not.
guts.
And I've gone to places where, like in Africa, I remember one time we were over, 3 of us were going over this knoll, and the Germans were on someplace further away from that knoll. And so he's sitting on the other side, him and I, and Pete Schaefer was the driver, and he's sitting on the other side, him and I, and we're looking through the field glasses. We didn't want him to sit on top, because they would see us when we got on the inside. And he sent Pete out, he said, tell Pete to go take a ride around that field down there and come back. And Pete took a ride around there, and he says, what the hell do you want me to get down there for? I says, well, he wanted to see if there's any Germans would shoot at you. God damn him, he said, use me for a target. So anyway,
That was Paddock. Wasn't that Paddock that
I
said that?
think so.
Sure.
So anyway, I guess the Krauts must have spotted us, because they sent a round over there. And boy, I went flying over the top of that knoll, and I went down the other side of that knoll, I went ass over bandbox, a rifle and all. When I got down the bottom, there's the infantry coming up. And they said, what happened to you, soldier? I said, well, if you get right outside that knoll, I said, you're gonna find out. So anyway, after you get around the side, then they said that had some shooting going on.
How about, did you have any thoughts about the guys that didn't make it, that were with you?
Thoughts about them?
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah, lots of times.
I mean,
think about them.
their life never even got started.
No,
They never got married or,
I had a young fellow with me one time who killed himself, well, accidentally. In Sicily, we were on Mount Etna, and we were sleeping on the clinkers there from the volcano, and we had to go around this corner to get get our food, that there was a truck that brought some food up for us. We could only go 2 guys at a time. And I can't think of his name, he was a young fellow from down south, and, we had a net over the Jeep, you know, camouflage net. And you couldn't go unless you had your rifle with you and your gas mask and the whole bit. So I says, hey, come on, they just called us to go to chow. So I says, he says, okay, where'll I get my gun? So he reached inside the Jeep and he pulled the gun out by the barrel, and it went off and went right through here and killed him. I know, I called the medics. Just took him off.
The trigger must have been a hair trigger.
Yeah, it just got caught on the net.
Yeah, something, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't, I remember that guy, I think I got out my diary.
Then another guy, I had another guy eating grass one time. He
What's it?
Whitson, him and I were laying on the telephone line in infantry, and he, the Germans come out with these jets, first time we'd seen jets, you know, just that same week. And we were going through this, like an apple orchard, and then there was grass about this high, you know, and under the trees. And we were going through the NG, we seen these jets come by, and they were real low. I'm telling you, like you say, you could almost hit them with a stick.
Something near Durham.
And he gets downside eating grass. Because, you know, he popped out, you know. So, gee, I called the medics, and they took him in a straitjacket and brought him back. And but he wasn't bad. After about 2 weeks, he come back. His name was Whitson from down south. And he came back, and he was riding in my truck. We had the wire in, you know, a 3/4 ton truck. And so this German came by with a load of hay on a wagon. And I says, hey, Whitson, there's your chow. But I got him out of more hot water, because he used to like to drink, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So we were putting telephones
Typical Alabama.
in the fire direction center. We had about 6 or 8 phones in the fire direction center, you know, going to the infantry and different places, you know, headquarters and all that. And but he drank too much, and, you know, got drunk. Geez, he couldn't lay lines, and if the captain seen him, he'd get court-martial.
Yeah.
So I put him in a barn, and I put some hay over him, you know, hayloft, so nobody see him. And so the captain said, well, where's Whitson? I said, oh, he's up there laying a line. Whitson was out like a light.
Mm.
And he was a good friend of mine.
Yeah. Did you ever get pinned down by a heavy artillery barrage
Yeah, in Africa.
in Africa?
Yeah.
Not
Couldn't-
D-Day.
couldn't-
Arkham too?
Yeah, I couldn't stick my head up in there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now that's where the guys really can get mental,
That was
right?
rough
We had
there.
no protection.
Because the Germans went back of us in Africa one time in Kasserine Pass.
Yeah.
Of course, them planes, the Stuka planes, they were accurate.
Mm.
But they could dive
They
down
had sirens on them.
160 miles an hour. That's all they had to do.
They had
was
sirens just
We had no,
coming right
we had
at
no
you.
ACAP.
Yeah.
Remember we got pinned in Aachen?
Oh, yeah,
We had half the city and they had half the city.
yeah.
I was up seeing Manny. Manny says, got the Jeep? And I says, yeah. That's why I went to see Lieutenant Berkey and I says, hey, can I use the Jeep? He said, yeah. So Manny and I went into, we had half of Aachen and the Germans had the other half. So Manny says, I know where there's some good wine. 'Cause so we'd been laying a line up to the 18th Infantry up there, you know, going building to building. So we go up, we park.
You could go in the cellar hall
Yeah,
and
we
go through the
go
whole
park the
street.
Jeep between 2 buildings. We get down the cellar hole, we had an old, like a clothes basket. Fill it full of wine,
Bring him back.
bring it back, put it in the Jeep and went down again. About that time, the 88s come in.
Mhm.
So we sit down there and got half potted while we're waiting for the thing to lift. After lifted, we put another basket up, cleaned off the debris from the Jeep, drove back to the outfit, and they had their wire section
The cellar.
in the cellar, and halfway down, one step was missing.
Our switchboard lay down there.
The switchboard down, and that's where they headquarters. So we was taking the stuff down, and I remember Captain Hudson come out and said, what do you got there, Manny? Manny said, yeah, just some wine. He said, leave a couple on the kitchen table. That was his office. So we left some down there, and that was on the night that Lieutenant Rosine he was the assistant
Oh, yeah.
communication officer.
Yeah.
He got potted with them, you know, he got feeling pretty good with the listed men, you know.
Oh, is he drunk?
And he
We
was
got
drunk,
him
so
drunk.
they slept upstairs. So Manny and somebody else, I don't know, it was me or who it was taking them
Yeah.
upstairs. And the captain come out and heard us come up, we tried to keep him quiet,
Yeah.
get him upstairs.
He wouldn't keep his mouth shut.
No.
He only keep his mouth shut. The captain wouldn't say anything. But he kept saying, well, he says, Captain, he says, I did wrong. He says, you ought to court-martial me and this and that. And he don't know what he's saying. He's half-cocked. The captain says, "You better get out of here before I do," he says. So we hurried and put him in the sack and took off. But you know, the way we go down and get the wine, sometimes there were 6 of us that would go down and repair lines. There was Prue and I and
Whitson,
three pairs,
yeah.
so they sent 2 guys out to repair this line, they never come back. So they sent the next 2 guys down, and I said, "Oh, we're next, you know," and they didn't come back. So they sent me and Prue down. I said, "Oh boy," I said, "We're not coming back either." So anyway, we went out, come to find out, that's where the wine was down there, that's where the guys were drinking. So whenever we wanted wine, we'd take the line out of the switchboard, see, and we'd tell the sergeant that the line blew out, we have to go out and fix it. So of course the switchboard operator would know the line was out. So we'd go and get the stuff and bring it back, and the line was all fixed. We have a test phone, we could check and say, okay, the line's all fixed. So he put the line back in, and we'd come in 10 minutes later with the Jeep. Well, I took Bucky with me one time, and I was gonna repair a line, I went in the Jeep. Boy, and I put that thing put the thing in my head, you know, and put the test clips on. When the pony blew right
Kind
out
of
of my
breaking the
head.
line, you know?
Somebody put electricity through it.
There was electric light lines there for some officers, like, and we were going, and then we finally found.
Trying to think of something to say about I can't think of what to say now.
Just tell them some lies.
Well, that doesn't take too long.
Well, coming home on a stupid.
Look right at them, Manny, and talk.
Talking about coming up from Brazil, and how we get on this, we're sitting in bucket seats, you know, and the pilot let some of the GIs drive it, and the plane was going this way and that way, you know. Finally, come to find out that's the pilot that was half caught. We landed down in Miami.
Look at where I was sitting, then back at Bucky.
Okay?
Okay. Vernon P. Davis, I was with him when he met his future wife up in Glasgow. We got drunk on a fish. And we was drinking and drinking and drinking and sober as a judge. Of course, it was always wet and misty. We get outdoors and walk about a half a block, and we were leaning on each other, and then these come up behind these 3 girls, 2 girls. So he grabbed one, and I went on the other side of the other one. And I ended up, I went with this girl, and about 5 miles in the stupid bus. And I said, you know, get out there about 5 miles. I figured the bus is gonna go back into Glasgow. He says, oh no, no, he says, I'm gonna stay here till 6 o'clock in the morning. So I said, how the hell do I get back into Glasgow? Oh, I said, walk. So I walked. I had to walk all the way back, but that was the night that Manny and that Vernon met his wife. He finally married her. He didn't come home with us, remember?
Yeah.
He went over to England to get married, and then he come back. He come back on the transport. Yeah, he probably got back before we did. But
Just look at each other, look back at the chair, little nod.
you know,
Yeah, this is acting. See, you could make a fortune. We can hear your voice now. How old were you when this picture was taken?
God, I don't remember.
24?
Must have been about that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a long time ago.
Okay. See, no matter where you move the camera, look, I'll take the picture away.
Oh, for Christ's sakes.
See?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
You don't know where that was taken.
That's quite a gadget. It's time too, huh?
Yeah. Reading the times. See the
Yeah.
see this thing move here as we're talking?
Mm-hmm.
That's recorded. That tells you how loud your voice is.
Oh, yeah.
And stereo.
Oh, for Christ's sakes. That's quite a camera. This picture was taken in a little village called Broad, Maine, about 7 miles north of Weymouth, England. And this is where we were preparing to make the invasion of Normandy. This is where we left from, the docks of Weymouth.
Perfect. Record a second, then go ahead and tell me that.
Okay, this is me taken in Morisnet, La Chapelle in Belgium. This just before we took it's a town just before Aachen, Germany, which we had the first town that was captured by the Americans in Germany.
Yeah. Let's do,
This is me taken in Belgium, Germany, in this people's house in the town.
no, it's,
I moved it.
no, Belgium, Germany. Belgium. Two countries. Go ahead.
Okay. This is me taken in Belgium, in a little town called Morsnet-la-Chapelle. It's a town just before Aachen, Germany, which the Americans, that was the first town the Americans took in Germany.